Welcome back, everyone. And I'm sorry about all that rambling and rumbling I've been doing in the first video and making it take so long. Now this video is going to pretty much be two parts, and I need to hurry up and get going. I really don't want this to stretch into three. I think two is going to be more than long enough. So let's go ahead and we'll get back into it. So anyway, where did I leave off? I believe I was talking about the part where Phyllis had gotten dressed again, and then she nuzzles up to Mary and she whispers in her ear, that I'm going to go and try to get help, or I'm going to lead them away when I leave. They follow me, you go and get help. And Mary agrees to it. And so, she, throws dirt and stuff in Weasel's face and she runs off. So, Sadie and Weasel go chasing after her. And then you get, which is really a great scene, in my opinion, in this movie. Okay. Because it's like, even though like when Wes Craven made this movie, he didn't know how to really like build tension and create suspense, but he does it really well in this movie, because you have the scene where you have Phyllis running through the woods trying, as best as she can to try to get away from Sadie and Weasel, and then it keeps going back and forth to Mary, who's trying to get away, but Junior keeps, getting in her way, keeping her from escaping. And so she's like, please, and you could see like, I mean, to me, this shows like, how Wes Craven was going to become a great director, because, you can see like Mary in her performance, the level of hysteria that she's getting to, because, it's like, she's so close. She knows that, her house is just right across the street. All they have to do is get to it. And she's like, come on, and everything else. And it's like, the tension is rising and stuff like that. And then meanwhile, you got that going, with Phyllis, like trying to get through the woods, trying to find a way out. At one point, she gets, tackled by Sadie, and Sadie is like, look, it's okay, I'll help you, I'll get you out of this. And Phyllis grabs a rock and hits her in the face and calls her a stupid dyke and all this. And so and then so Weasel sees that Phyllis hit Sadie with the rock, and she's like, oh my God, you bitch, I'm gonna kill you and all this stuff. And he goes to Sadie, he's like, Sadie, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Come on, let's go get her and all this stuff. So, and that was the thing, too, is like Craven even mentioned that in the commentary and in interviews and things like that, that was like something that really bothered a lot of people, was that these horrible people actually care about each other, and they actually, they actually have some semblance of humanity to them and things like that. So anyway, Phyllis, she's just about ready to get out of the woods, and she sees the road, she sees the car, and just when you think she's going to get there, Krug steps in and he's got a machete, and so this is not going to go well. She doesn't get away, and so she tries to run in one direction, and Sadie blocks her off, tries to go in another direction. Weasel blocks her off, and like they're closing in on her, and then Weasel comes up and stabs her in the back with the switchblade knife. So she falls down, and so they're kicking her and everything. See, that was the thing. When I watched it on VHS, I don't think that part was even in the movie, where they start kicking her while she's on the ground, crawling away. She's starting to bleed out and all this kind of stuff. And I forgot to mention that at one point, you got the dopey sheriff and his deputy, Martin Cove. They're sitting in their, they're sitting in their office, and then they get a report on the radio, which, saying that Krug and his accomplices, they're trying to get away, and they give the make and model of the car, and the two of them realize it's that car that was parked in front of the Collingwood's home. So they're trying to get out, they get into the car, and how long does it take to get to the Collingwood's place? About 15 minutes. Was it? Well, he said make it 10 or something like that. So anyway, so they're trying to get there. Then the car breaks down. Well, it doesn't break down. They run out of gas. And so now they're stuck. They have to walk, which obviously is like, they get there too soon, So they have to get out and start walking. So now we go back to the woods, and you see that Phil, they come to the really interesting part of the movie. Hang on here, because it's on the poster and all this kind of stuff. The poster is kind of misleading though, but you see Phyllis there against the tree and everything. So she knows she's going to die. She knows she doesn't have long to live or any of that kind of stuff. So, Weasel comes up to her. He's all like, how's your back, baby? And so she spits blood in his face. And that's when these guys just lose it. They take the switchblade knife, they start stabbing her and start cutting her, and they rip her pants off and do all this horrible stuff to her. And that was the thing. It was when I first watched it. It was on the Vestron VHS, so a lot of that was gone. I didn't even see a lot of that till later when I saw it on DVD where it was uncut for the first time. And they're like pulling out her guts and everything else. Which you come to find out was basically just condoms filled with fake blood they tied together, tried to make it look like intestines and stuff like that. So, but so now we get back to Mary. Mary's trying to get away. And so, Junior's, he's all, Mary, what would you do if you were me and all this? And so she tells him, I can get you a fix. He's like, you can give me a fix? Yeah, my father, he's got everything, he's got drugs in his house and all this kind of stuff. All you gotta do, just please, I just live right over there and all this stuff. Like I said, the tension is building and building and building. The suspense is getting crazy and all this stuff. And to me, that was a sign of things to come. That was like, okay, say what you want, but Craven shows he's got talent, shows he's going to be an up and comer as far as being a director goes. And so they're getting out of the woods, and you think they're going to make it, and then Krug and the other two, they show up, and then you know, Mary falls to the ground, and she's all like, Phyllis, and he's like, Phyllis, because I guess they never bothered to find out what her name was. And she's like, did she get away? And he just like, and then, the thing, like when I saw it on VHS for the first time, they didn't have this scene in there, but I read about it. And so it was actually surprising when I finally got to see it was when it turns out they hacked off Phyllis's arm and they just kind of drop it on the ground. And then, now you got the cops, they're, trying to get to the house. Well, this car with these guys pull up, and actually one of the guys is Steve Miner, who would go on to become a big director himself. It's like he directed House, he directed Halloween H2O, Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, Lake Placid. He directed all these movies, and unfortunately too, he directed that really piece of shit Day of the Dead remake. But anyway, so surprising there because he worked on the crew in the movie. So the cops realize they've been screwed over by these guys in the car, so they continue walking. And so, Krug just viciously rapes Mary, and it's a disgusting scene. It's horrible to look at. And he's on top of her, and he's slobbering all over her face and everything else. And they get done. Well, before that, I'm sorry. Before that, Krug takes Weasel's switchblade knife, and he carves his name into Mary's chest. Kind of something like out of the Manson family would do. And so he viciously rapes her and everything. And when he gets done, this is it. Mary realizes at this point there's no chance of escape for her. She knows she's going to die. She knows, there's no point in fighting it anymore. They're going to kill her. She's never going to make it out of this alive. So she goes and, she gets up, she throws up, and then, she says a prayer, and then she walks into the lake, in the middle of the lake. And, you get the infamous scene, the one scene that, like, they show in all the pictures and stuff, where David Hess, takes the gun from Weasel, and he aims it at Mary and basically shoots her down execution style. And you see the dog in the Collingwood's yard, hears the gunshots and starts getting riled up. So then he tells Junior, go get the kid out of the car so we can get cleaned up and get the hell out of here and stuff. So, then now we get to the scene with the, Ida and the chicken truck, or Ada and the chicken truck. And that was kind of the thing. Okay. Craven did not really do a good job of blending comedy with horror. He really didn't. A lot of the humor in this really falls flat, does not work and stuff. But, hey, it's his first movie. I can cut the guy a break. It's like, it's hard. Blending comedy and horror is a hard thing to do. And so it's like, you got to be really skilled to do that. You got to have a talent for it. It really does take a talent to combine comedy and horror into a movie and make it work. John Landis does a good job of it. Other people like Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, they do a good job of it. But, it's like, you got to have a talent for it. And, even though Wes Craven was an easygoing, funny guy in real life, he had a good sense of humor. It just didn't work when he added the comedy into the horror movies. So, but anyway, so yeah, they don't get a ride on the chicken truck, so they're pretty much screwed. So they got to continue walking on. And then, so, now Krug and Sadie and Weasel, they get cleaned up, and, they go, turns out they end up staying in the house of Mary's parents, Dr. Collingwood and his wife. So, they go ahead and they let him stay there and all this kind of stuff. And then, right off the bat, they kind of seem a little off and everything. And so, um, then Mrs. Collingwood, she prepares dinner for them. They all sit around eating spaghetti. But here's the problem: Junior is upstairs asleep, and he's having nightmares about what he saw, what had happened. And so he starts screaming, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry!" And Krug goes up there and is like, "Shut up, you son of a bitch! I should have killed you, and left you down there in the lake with her and all this stuff. And you're worse than your goddamn mother and all this kind of stuff." So so Weasel's trying to explain that that they ended up losing this big account because of him and all this, and he's really upset about it. And it's meant to play funny, but it does kind of fall flat. Like I said, just that's probably the biggest complaint that I have about this movie is just that Craven just didn't have the knack, or at least at this point, he didn't have the knack for combining horror with humor. So anyway, so moving along later that night, the Collingwoods are, Mrs. Collingwood, she's trying to sleep, but she wakes up because she hears Junior in the bathroom. He needs a fix. He's trying to, he's having withdrawals and everything because he needs his heroin. But he's in the bathroom. He's throwing up. And so, Mrs. Collingwood goes in, and the one thing she notices that he's wearing a necklace that, they gave Mary for her birthday. And so, she starts to putting everything together. So she's leading him back to his room, but he says, "No, I want to go in here." So he goes into the bedroom with Krug and Weasel and Sadie, where they're basically, putting down the Collingwoods because they, it's like, they live in this big house. They got all this fancy shit. They don't need it. And these people are ridiculous. Having all this stuff doesn't mean anything and all this. So he goes in there, is like, and she overhears him, "I gotta have a fix. You gotta let me have my fix," and all this stuff. And she overhears him, and talking about, "Crew, we gotta get out of here. If they find out we killed their daughter." And he's like, "Would you shut the fuck up? Or I'll put you in the lake with her," and all this. And meanwhile, Mrs. Collingwood, she goes into the bedroom and she opens the briefcase and she finds, or the suitcase, and she finds all of their bloody clothes. And she realizes, oh shit, and she, after everything she hears, she gets her husband up and they go and they find Mary, who basically had enough life left in her to crawl out of the lake, and she basically dies on the edge. And so she's like, "Oh my God, honey, is there anything we can do for her?" He's like, "No, she's gone." And so they decide, okay, now these people are pissed. They're going to start getting revenge on these people. So then you got like Weasel. He's having a bad dream where he's dreaming that the Collingwoods are gonna basically take a chisel, put it to his teeth, and knock his teeth out. So he wakes up. He goes, starts walking around. He notices, the Collingwoods are now asleep in the room. He sees Mrs. Collingwood, standing in the living room having a drink, and so he goes and talks to her, and she's, and they have this little bit of small talk and everything, and she's, and she's saying like, "My husband doesn't take me seriously." She's trying to seduce him. So it's like, "I can make love to a looker like you with my eyes closed," and so let's, and he's like, "Let's go over the couch," and but she doesn't want to go to the couch because they got Mary's body is on the couch, and so she's like, "Let's go outside so my husband doesn't hear us and everything." So they're walking, and so she's all like, "Oh man, yeah, that was always kind of a dream of mine. Somebody could take me with their hands tied behind their back." And he's like, "Baby, I can do it." So he takes his belt and gives it to her and all this stuff. And so she ties his hand behind his back, and so she starts giving him a BJ. And just when and in the meanwhile, while all this is going on, you got Dr. Collingwood. He's going around the house. He's setting up booby traps because if you watch Wes Craven movies, one thing you're gonna know: this guy loves booby traps. He always had scenes where like characters in his movies would set up booby traps. So they do. He's got the booby traps ready to go and all this. And so he goes in. He's got the shotgun. He's got it pointed at them. And so so now we go back to Mrs. Collingwood. She's continuing the BJ, and just when Weasel's about ready to he's about ready to go, she rips it right off with her teeth. And he's screaming and he's just howling in pain and all this stuff. And so Krug and Sadie, they wake up and then they see, Collingwood's got the gun aimed at him. And then, so I was like, what's the matter, Doc? And all this. And he's like, shut your mouth. And so they get into this fight and scuffle. And so they're going through the house. And Dr. Collingwood's like trying to, he's leading them through. And Krug keeps hitting into all these, booby traps and everything else. And so, and, he finds out that, okay, yeah, they know that we killed their daughter. So he's taunting them. He's like, making fun of Mary's, dead body. And, so he's hitting Dr. Collingwood and, tell her, yeah, your daughter was tough. We had a hard time with her and everything. Man, you're just a pussy and all this stuff. And so beating on him and everything else. And so, it looks like this is going to be 3 videos. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so they continue fighting and all this stuff. And at one point, Junior interrupts. He shoots off the gun. And so, because Krug has got him hooked on heroin, he's like, tell him, Junior, listen to Daddy. What I want you to do is take the gun, put it in your mouth, and blow your brains out. Blow your brains out. Blow your brains out. And Junior actually does it. So he shoots himself. So now, Krug starts hearing a noise coming from the basement. He grabs the shotgun. He goes to the basement door. He's looking down there. Mr. Collingwood's coming up, and he's got the chainsaw. And remember, this was 2 years before Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So 2 years before Tobe Hooper came along. But, so he, like, Krug aims a gun and, pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. And Dr. Collingwood's like, yeah, I'm sorry, Krug. I only found 1 shell. So now you got Collingwood's chasing him around the house with the chainsaw and everything else. And it's like, he's like trying to block him off with like furniture and stuff. And at one point he runs to Sadie and Sadie's like, get away from me and all this. So Krug turns around, tries to open the door, but he's got the door rigged, booby trapped and everything. So he starts getting electrocuted. And so Sadie, she runs out the back door as she falls, and then, Mrs. Collingwood comes in, she grabs a knife and they're fighting and all this stuff. And, but Sadie's able to beat her in a fight. And so she goes and runs, but she doesn't see it. She ends up falling into the swimming pool. And so, Mrs. Collingwood, she sees that the switchblade knife is on the ground. So she grabs it. And so, she runs up. Sadie's like trying to get out of the pool and she just swipe and cuts Sadie's throat. And Sadie, falls back into the pool. And then she dies. Then, meanwhile, go back into what's going on in the house. You got Dr. Collingwood. He's chasing him, and I think at one point you hear Krug say, just get it over with already and stuff. And so just as he's about ready to cut into Krug with the chainsaw, the cops come in and he's like, Doc, for God's sake, no. And so he ends up cutting up Krug with the chainsaw and everything. And so, yeah. So that's pretty much about it. At the end of the movie, Marty Cove, comes in. He's got Mrs. Collingwood just kind of like, because she's all covered in blood and stuff. And so, they see Mary on the floor, and then you see the parents are just kind of, and that's where the movie ends. And then you get the curtain call. So, anyway, so yeah, I think I pretty much went into depth pretty much about the movie. Now, here's some thoughts that I have about it. Let's see. I'm going to try to get this in as quick as I can. The movie, is a good movie. I think, yeah, it's definitely got its problems, but I mean, what the hell do you expect? It's like, go look at all the masters of horror. Look at Tobe Hooper's movie Eggshells. Look at David Cronenberg's movie Shivers. Look at Carpenter's movie Dark Star. You notice, like, their first movies were not really that great. Not in terms of story or anything, but I mean, in terms of like execution, filmmaking style, things like that. They had to learn, I mean, it's like, it's so rare when somebody can just be a great filmmaker right off the bat. When you make your first movie, you're going to make mistakes. And Craven was no exception. This is a man who did not spend 4 years in film school or anything like that. He had to learn, it's like he quit his job as a professor to go to New York and try to learn and go through editing and everything else, so I mean, it was his first movie. So I've definitely seen a lot of first films by filmmakers that are a hell of a lot worse than this. Is it a perfect movie? No. Does it have flaws? Yes. It has some things wrong with it, but it's not a bad movie at all. And I'm about ready to run out of time here, so I'll go ahead and just wrap this up for the moment. And this is going to be a three-parter, folks. I'm sorry, but I'll do my best to make the third part short and sweet. Let's get this over with. So if you watched all this, thank you for doing it, and I'll see you in just a minute.